Hello everybody and welcome to session. So in this video I'm going to be going through pretty much all of the basics of session, everything that you can think of that you need to get started with session messaging application. So session is designed a little bit differently to your average messenger. We've gone to a lot of effort to try and make sure it's as easy to understand as possible, but in case there's anything that isn't super clear to you immediately, that's why we're making this video. So hopefully this will be able to answer all of the questions that you have about session. We're going to go through a lot of different things today, but we'll have some bookmarks in the video. So if there is any specific issue that you're wondering about, have a look down in the description and see if you can jump straight to the section that's relevant for you. So the first thing that we're going to go through today is account creation. So the first time that you open up the app, you'll be greeted by this screen here that will kind of explain a few of the concepts about session, and you have these two buttons down at the bottom. You can either create your session ID or you can continue your session. Now, we're not going to worry about continue your session for now. We'll get to that a bit later. For now, we're just going to go ahead and create session ID. I'm going to get this little animation here, and a bunch of numbers are going to show up. Now is the time that I'm going to explain a little bit about what the session ID actually is and how you're going to use it. So the session ID is how people are going to contact you on session. Now this is really important because if someone doesn't have your session ID, they're not going to be able to send you a message. And if you don't have anybody's session ID, you won't be able to send anybody a message. So think of this like your new, more secure, more private version of a phone number. And it is a lot more complicated than a phone number. As you can see, there are a lot of numbers and letters in this key here. But that is a part of the design. It makes things a lot more private and secure because this is actually the public key of a public-private key pair. So Session is really unique in the sense that it lets you manage your own encryption keys. You don't have to rely on us to protect or to create or manage your keys at all. It's all managed right on your device, so you are always in control. So this is your session ID. I've just created a brand new one. You can always create a new session ID really quickly and really easily, unlike with something like a phone number where there are often a lot of hoops that you have to jump through in order to get a new phone number or to get a phone number at all. Your session ID isn't connected to your real identity at all. It's not connected to your real name unless you want it to be. It is just a more private solution. Okay, so just by clicking that button, we've now created our session ID and our account more or less is already created. So immediately I can press copy to copy my session ID and share it with somebody else, or I can just click continue. So for now, I'm just going to go and click continue, and now you get to pick your display name. So this is the name that will appear to people when you have messaged them. Think of it like a nickname. You can't message people using display names. This is purely cosmetic. It's just there for the people who are already in your contacts list so that you can quickly, at a glance, tell what conversation belongs to what person or to what identity without having to use session IDs, which aren't very readable. Session IDs are just intended for being able to get in contact with people initially. This is how you're going to tell what conversation is what. So for this one, I'm just going to put tutorial. Okay, and now we have to choose the version of notifications that we want to use. So there are two different versions of message notifications. There's fast mode and there's slow mode, and it's going to prompt you to choose one at setup. However, at any time, if you want to, you can change the notification mode that you're using. So fast mode, basically the notifications are going to work exactly the same way as they do for every other app that's probably on your phone, where either Apple servers or if you're using Android, Google servers will serve a notification to you. Now, this is a lot faster. It's the way that most applications, every messaging application more or less, is going to use this version of push notifications. That's extremely standard. However, if for some reason you don't want to use that, there is slow mode. So slow mode, instead of notifications effectively being sent to your device, you will periodically, your phone will check and see if you have any notifications, and if it does, then it will show them. But the problem with this, obviously, is that sometimes it can take a little bit longer for notifications to populate, and so you might not be alerted as soon as a message comes through. Now, for me, I already know that Apple notification servers are being used by my phone for a lot of different applications, so for me it doesn't make a big difference. I'm going to choose fast mode, but you can choose whichever one you want. And then we just click continue. Okay, and so now we are going to be greeted by this screen here, and you can see at the top it says you're almost finished. Secure your account by saving your recovery phrase. Now that's really important. Before I actually go ahead and message anybody, I'm going to come in here, and I've got this screen, meet your recovery phrase. So for the purposes of this video, I'm going to show the recovery phrase, but this account isn't connected to anything. I'm going to delete it once I'm done. But what your recovery phrase does is allow you to restore your session ID to a new device if you lose your device, or if you get a new device. So the recovery phrase is really important. And it's very important not only that you store your recovery phrase somewhere, that you're not going to lose it, because if you lose your recovery phrase, there's no way to restore your account. Your account will be lost forever, including all of your contacts. People won't be able to message you with that session ID anymore. There's no way to get it back. So I click hold to reveal here, and you can see that I've got this string of words. So that's what you would want to go and save. You can copy it using this button at the bottom here. But it's also very important that wherever you do store your recovery phrase, that it's somewhere that's very safe, secure, and private. Because the reason for this is if somebody other than you is able to get your recovery phrase, they will be able to restore your account, which means that your account will no longer be private. It will no longer be secure. So it's pivotal that your recovery phrase is always kept in a very safe place, and not to give it to anybody. Nobody will ever ask for a legitimate reason to see your recovery phrase, and you don't need to show it to anybody. So make sure that that's in a super safe place. I'm going to copy it, but I don't need it right now. We're going to revisit recovery phrases a little bit later. For now, we're going to come back here, and now you can see that we've got a completely clear screen with a plus button down the bottom, or you don't have any contacts, start a session. So how do I start a session? How do I send somebody a message? Well, what I'm going to need is somebody else's session ID. So there are many ways that you might get somebody a session ID. You might be able to share it with your friend in real life. You might be able to share it over a different messaging application. Somebody might have their session ID posted publicly, which I do, and I know that Key, the CTO of Session, also has his session ID publicly available. So you'll be able to find those on the internet, and you can send us a message if you would like, and you don't have anybody else to talk to on Session just yet. For the purposes of this tutorial, I'm just going to send myself a message. So I can either click this start a session, or down the bottom here, if I tap on the plus, you'll see three options pop up, and I'm going to go for direct message this time. So in this field here, I'm going to paste my session ID. So you can see here, this string of numbers is my normal session ID. And then I'm going to click next. And what I could do is send a message. I could go, hello there, and send a message to myself, but I'm actually not going to send that message. And there is a reason, which I am about to show you. So what I'm going to go do instead is go in here, and I'm going to copy my own tutorial session ID, and I'm going to use on my desktop I'm going to send myself a message on this blank account because I want to demonstrate how message requests work. So you can see up the top, we've had a bubble pop up message requests, and there's one message request. So if I tap on that there, you can see from myself there's a message there that says hello. And if I come in here, I can either tap accept, which will add this person, which is just me, to my contacts, I can press delete, which will not allow them into the contacts, and it will delete the message request, or I can simply reply. And by replying, I'll also be accepting the request. So I can just reply and say hi, and you'll see a little circle there, and then there we go. So we've sent a message, and now if I come back here, you can see, look at that, I've got myself in my contacts list there. So there we go, we've successfully sent a direct message. And I've also successfully added Alex, which is me, and this session ID to my contacts. So you can see when I tapped on this plus at the bottom, there were actually two other options. So there was closed group and also open group. So if I tap on open group here, open groups are a special kind of group on session designed for large communities of people. Generally, when I say large, I'm talking 100 plus people. So you can join any open group. Anyone can create an open group, although you do have to run a server. It's a little bit of a more involved process to run an open group, which I won't explain in this video, but we do have a video about how to set up an open group if you're interested in that. But for the purposes of this video, there are some default open groups down here that it's suggested that you can join. So I'm actually going to join the session open group, and you can see it has been added here to my conversation screen. So there you go, some messages are loading in. You can see there's quite a lot of messages in the session open group, and there's a whole bunch of people in here discussing various things. So that's an open group. The other kind of group is a closed group. So in order to create a closed group, you actually need to have existing contacts. So here you can see I can create a closed group with just me and Alex, which is not a particularly useful group, but I can go ahead and create it anyway and say this is the group of Alex's. There we go. And you can see that it's just creating this group. So here we go, there's two members here, and I can send messages back and forth. And this closed group has all of the same encryption, onion routing, and privacy and security protections that direct messages have. So closed groups are really useful, but only for smaller groups of people, less than 100. And you can see that I can also edit the group here and add new members. As I potentially meet more people or have more people in my contacts, I can come in here and add additional people to the group. So now we're going to go through some other things. We've managed to message some people, join some groups, which is obviously the really important basics of session and how session works. Now I'm going to go through some more of the settings in here. So if I click in the top left here, you can see that I've opened up my settings screen. So there are a few things to note here. So first of all, up front and center, you can see that you've got your session ID, which you can copy or share there using those buttons, which is super useful. If I tap on tutorial, I can actually change my display name to something else. Maybe I want to change it to demo. Okay, then I tap done there, and I've changed my display name to demo. The other thing I can do is if I tap on this icon, you see I can upload a profile picture. So I can use the photo library on my phone to upload a profile picture there. The other thing I can do is change between light or dark mode, or I can tell session to follow my system settings. So on some mobile devices, you can set it to automatically change between light and dark mode, depending on whether it's daytime or nighttime. And if you click system, session will do the same thing. It will follow whether it's daytime or nighttime. It will use light mode or dark mode respectively. So I'm going to switch to dark mode just so that you can see some of the differences. Everything has changed to a darker accent color, but I'm going to switch back to light mode for now. The other thing here, you can see there's a little QR code icon, which if I open this, you can actually share your session ID as a QR code. So if you have somebody, you can see there's another window there, scan QR code. Somebody can scan this QR code and use that to add you on session as another more easily shareable way than the session ID. There's also this option here, path, which is actually not a setting, but what it will tell you is the path through session's decentralized network that is being used to deliver your messages. So if you don't know, Session has a decentralized infrastructure, which means that there are no central servers. All of Session's servers are operated by community members and various different people all over the world. The reason for this is because it offers a greatly heightened level of privacy. So you can see here that instead of using any centralized server, I'm here in Australia. I've sent my packet to Germany, which has then been sent to Canada, to Germany again, and then to the destination, which funnily enough is obviously back in Australia. So that's really interesting. You can actually see in the app the path that your messages are going to take, which is really fantastic. The next thing we're going to go through is how to delete your account. So if you don't want your session ID anymore, you can actually delete your account. So what I'm actually going to do before I go ahead and delete my account, I'm going to come into my recovery phrase here and copy that really quickly, because we might want that later in case we want to get our account back. So I can come in here and there's this big red button down the bottom, which says clear data. So when I click on that button, you can see I can either cancel. It's going to delete everything. It's going to absolutely wipe my account. But there are two different options here. I can either just clear my device, which means I will disconnect my session ID from this phone. Or you can delete your entire account. So deleting your entire account not only will remove that device from that phone, it will delete every single message which is currently still stored on the network. It will remove all of your contacts permanently. You won't be able to get them back. So be very careful about pressing this entire account button. But what I'm actually going to do instead, I'm just going to wipe the device because then I'm going to show you how to recover your account. So let's just go with device only. We're going to get a circle there. And then here we are back at your session begins here. So this time, instead of creating a new session ID, I'm actually going to tap on continue your session. And now it's going to prompt me to enter my recovery phrase. So that's where that's going to come in handy. I'm going to put my recovery phrase in and hit continue. So I'm going to have to pick a new display name. I'm going to go with demo again, choose my notification mode again. And in a moment, you will see that it will reconnect to the network. And here we go. It's restoring the contacts, the groups, the conversations that I had before. And if I come in here, you can see that my session ID is the same. I've got the same session ID back. So it's very simple to recover your account if you have your recovery phrase. But without your recovery phrase, it is completely impossible to get your messages back or to get your session ID back or any of your contacts. So be very, very careful. The next thing we're going to discuss is self-deleting messages. So I'm going to demonstrate this just in my DMs here. So if I open my conversation here and then tap up the top, I can open my conversation settings. So you can see there are several settings here which we can discuss. But the one we're going to talk about first is disappearing messages. So if you turn disappearing messages on, it will turn them on for both me and the other person in the conversation. So that's quite important. So when they send messages, it will also have this self-deleting quality. And you see you've got this slider here, which allows you to change the amount of time that a message will remain for before it is deleted. Now, keeping in mind that the message will disappear this amount of time, so in this case 5 seconds, after the other user sees the message. So I'm going to actually demonstrate that really quickly. I'm going to set it to the smallest time increment, which is 5 seconds. Come back here. You can see in the conversation screen there is a notification saying the disappearing messages timer has been set. And you can see that on the other side of the screen as well. So on my desktop, where I've also got session open right now, that notification has come up in the conversation as well. So if I send a message really quickly saying delete this, then I'm going to send that. It's just sending really quickly. Okay, it's sent. And because I have straight away seen the message, you can see that timer tick down and then the message is gone. It has deleted from both the desktop where I sent the message as well as the mobile device that delivered the message. And that message is irretrievable for both accounts there, so it is permanently deleted. The next thing I'm going to show you how to do is how to send a voice message. Now, voice messages are relatively simple things to send. You can see here that you've got a little microphone icon on the right-hand side of the message field. So if you hold that down, you can actually start recording a voice message. So right now, I am recording this, and I'm just holding this down, and you can see that I can slide my finger to the left in order to cancel the voice message, or if I just simply let go, it will send. Okay, so as the other message did, you can see that that voice message that I sent, it was seen and then it was deleted. So the next thing that I'm going to show you how to perform is a call. So calls are something which you actually need to enable in your privacy settings. So if you open up your settings here and tap privacy, right down the bottom here you can see voice and video calls. Now by default, this will be disabled in your app. And the reason for this is just to protect and preserve people's privacy. So if you do want to use voice and video calls, which I know a lot of people do, step one is to come into your app, go into your privacy settings and enable voice and video calls. And you can see there's a little message that comes up here warning you about the potential privacy impact. So I've enabled calls, and the other person that you are trying to call will also have to have calls enabled in order for it to work. So if you don't have both parties with calls enabled, the call will not go through. So it's very important to have the call functionality enabled. And if you're having trouble with calls not delivering, not connecting, the first thing you should check is that both people have calls enabled in their settings. So calls are very simple to perform. Once you've gone and enabled that setting, you can see that there is a call icon up in the corner here and you can ring. I'm not going to finish this call right now, but there is a fully functional call demo available in a separate video if you want a more in-depth run through of how to do calls. The next thing that I want to show all of you is how to block users. So sometimes you might get people trying to message you that you don't want to speak to, or you're not interested in speaking to anymore, you don't want to hear from, and you might want to block them. And that's totally understandable. So if you just come into your conversation settings here, the same place where we enable disappearing messages, this is where we're going to enable block this user. And you get a little confirmation message. They won't be able to call you or send messages, but go ahead, we're going to block the user. So then you can see here that there's this status update at the top that says Alex is blocked. So you can also see in your conversation screen, instead of there being a green bar or no bar on the left, there is a red bar. So that will indicate that that person has been blocked. The next thing that I want to talk about is nicknames. So in the same way that I set my nickname as demo, you can actually, once you have started a conversation with somebody, you can change their nickname for yourself. Now, this will only reflect on your device. It won't change their nickname for everybody else. So if I change this nickname to just say me, in my conversation screen, it will say me. But to everybody else, this account will still appear as Alex. So that's just a little personal touch that you can do. The next thing to talk about is ONS. So ONS is actually something which you can't do in the session application right now. It's handled externally, and there is a separate demo on how to set up an ONS. But I just wanted to show you how ONS can work in session. So if I come in here and unblock this account, but I'm going to actually delete this message. Oh no, I've lost their session ID. I don't know how to message this person. I've actually got an ONS set up. What an ONS does is allows you to contact people even if you don't have their session ID. It allows you to map a session ID to a more readable nickname that can be used to discover other users. So that session ID that I have is actually mapped just to the letter A. So if I come in here and I enter just the letter A, you will see that I've actually got the same user without needing to input the entire session ID, which is a lot more convenient, a lot easier to share with people, and it makes it a lot easier for other people to find you. Now I'm going to just go through a few more of the settings that we have here. So there are a number of privacy settings which you may want to enable or disable depending on your personal comfort levels. A lot of these features are things which are standard in a lot of messaging applications, but which we decided to make opt-in optional settings in the interest of protecting people's privacy. So you can see here, the first setting is read receipts. So read receipts will allow people to see or to know if you have read their message or not. The way that this will display is when messages have been read. If you have this setting enabled, it will show 2 ticks next to the message instead of 1. The other one is typing indicators, which will allow people to see 3 dots if you're typing a message to them. Screen lock allows you to add an extra level of security to your app by requiring some kind of biometric or passcode in order to unlock your conversation screen when you first open the app. Disabling preview in the app switcher, which means that if I come out here, you can't actually see anything. You can see it just shows the session logo. Clearing conversation history will clear your conversation history. Sending link previews, which means that there will be a richer link preview to websites and things like that, or if you send a link to a video, you will get things like a video thumbnail, that kind of stuff. And calls, we've already explained calls. This will enable or disable the ability to send and receive video calls. So that is pretty much everything that you need to know to get started with Session. That will be pretty much everything today. This video might have things added to it in the future. It might have things removed if they change. But if you run into any issues that we haven't covered here, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're always trying to improve and make sure that there's as much support as possible for everyone that's trying to use Session. But thank you for tuning into this video, and we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.